Lena Ward thought signing divorce papers would finally set her free until she stepped into that elevator and came face to face with Victor Moretti, the Mafia boss she'd been hiding from for 2 years. But it wasn't the gun at his hip that made her blood run cold. It was the way his eyes dropped to her 8-month pregnant belly and the single word that shattered everything. Mine. Some secrets refuse to stay buried. Some men refuse to let go. And some debts can only be paid in blood, tears, and truth. If you're ready for a story of dangerous love, impossible choices, and the fight for freedom, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The elevator doors slid open on the 42nd floor with a soft chime that felt too cheerful for what Lena Ward was about to do. She stepped into the marble lobby of Morrison and Associates, her hand instinctively moving to the small of her back, where the weight of 8 months of pregnancy had settled like a constant reminder of everything she'd lost and everything she'd gained. The law firm's reception area gleamed with the kind of understated wealth that whispered power rather than shouted it. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city she'd once called home, now spread beneath her like a map of memories she'd spent 2 years trying to forget. "Mrs. Moretti?" The receptionist's voice cut through her thoughts, and Lena flinched at the name. "It's Ward," she corrected quietly. "Lena Ward. I have an appointment with Mr. Morrison at 2. The young woman's cheeks colored slightly. "Of course. I'm so sorry. Mr. Morrison is running just a few minutes behind. Please, have a seat." Lena lowered herself carefully into one of the leather chairs arranged around a glass coffee table, grateful for the support. The baby shifted inside her, a rolling movement that pressed against her ribs and made her catch her breath. She'd become accustomed to these moments, the sudden awareness that she was carrying a whole separate life, a person who would enter the world in just a few weeks with no knowledge of the complicated, dangerous circumstances of her conception. One signature, Lena told herself, smoothing her hands over the simple black dress she'd chosen that morning. One signature, and it's finally over. The divorce papers had been drawn up months ago, sent through layers of lawyers so thick that Victor would never be able to trace them back to her location. She'd built an entire life in hiding, a small apartment in a quiet town 3 states away, a job waitressing at a diner where nobody asked questions, a new name that tasted strange in her mouth for the first 6 months. But the baby changed everything. The baby meant medical appointments that required insurance, documentation that could be tracked. It meant making decisions about the future that went beyond simple survival. And it meant eventually that she had to return to the city where it all began to sign papers that would legally sever her from Victor Moretti once and for all. She'd been so careful. She'd planned this trip down to the minute. Fly in early morning, appointment at 2, flight out at 6. She'd chosen this particular law firm because it was in the financial district, far from the neighborhoods Victor controlled. She'd even checked the calendar to make sure there were no major events that might bring him to this part of the city. What she hadn't planned for was fate. Lena Ward? She looked up to see a tall man in an expensive suit approaching, his hand extended. James Morrison looked exactly like his website photo, silver-haired, distinguished, with the kind of confident smile that came from winning more cases than he lost. "Mr. Morrison?" She accepted his hand briefly, then used the chair's armrest to push herself to standing, her other hand supporting her belly. His eyes flickered down, and something shifted in his expression, surprise maybe, or concern. "Please, come to my office. We can take care of everything there." Lena followed him down a hallway lined with abstract art, each piece probably worth more than she'd earned in the past 2 years combined. The baby kicked again, harder this time, as if sensing her anxiety. "It's almost over," she thought. "Just a few more minutes." Morrison's office was all dark wood and leather, with the same expansive city view. He gestured her toward a chair across from his massive desk and settled into his own seat with the ease of someone completely comfortable in his domain. "I have to say," he began, pulling a folder from his desk drawer, "in all my years of practicing family law, I've never had a case quite like this one. The level of discretion required has been extraordinary." Lena's hands tightened in her lap. "Has there been any problem with the terms?" No. Everything is in order. Your husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, signed his portion 3 days ago. All we need is your signature, and the divorce will be finalized within 30 days. Victor signed. The thought sent an unexpected pang through her chest. For some reason, she'd imagined he would fight it, would refuse to let her go even on paper. But perhaps she'd overestimated her importance in his life. Perhaps, in the 2 years since she'd disappeared, he'd moved on completely. There is one thing I should mention, Morrison continued, his tone careful. Mr. Moretti's lawyers included a clause requesting information about your current residence. I informed them that you wish to keep that confidential, and they withdrew the request. However what? Lena's voice came out sharper than she intended. Morrison leaned back in his chair, studying her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I'm obligated to inform you that Mr. Moretti has the right to contest the divorce if he can prove that material information was withheld during the proceedings, information that might affect the settlement or custody arrangements. The word custody hit her like a physical blow. Her hands moved protectively to her belly. There are no custody arrangements, she said firmly. This divorce is clean, no shared assets, no children to consider. Even as she said it, guilt twisted in her stomach. The lie sat heavy on her tongue, bitter and necessary. Morrison's gaze dropped pointedly to her pregnant belly, then back to her face. Mrs. Moretti, Miss Ward, I'm your attorney. Anything you tell me is privileged, but I need to ask, is there anything about your current situation that Mr. Moretti should be made aware of? No. The word came out too quickly, too hard. Nothing that concerns him. It was the truth and a lie all at once. The baby was Victor's. She'd known that with certainty from the moment she'd seen the positive pregnancy test 6 months after leaving him. But Victor had given up any right to this child the moment she'd witnessed him put a bullet in a man's head over a perceived slight. The moment she'd realized that the charming, protective man she'd married was also capable of casual, cold-blooded violence. She'd left that night with nothing but the clothes on her back, and the certainty that no child of hers would grow up in a world where death was just another business transaction. Morrison held her gaze for a long moment, then sighed and opened the folder. Very well. If you'll just review these final documents and sign where indicated. Lena reached for the papers with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the legal language that would officially end her marriage to Victor Moretti. 2 years of hiding, of looking over her shoulder, of building a new life from nothing. It all came down to this. She was reaching for the pen Morrison offered when her phone buzzed in her purse. She ignored it, focusing on the signature line, but it buzzed again and again. I'm sorry, she murmured, fishing out her phone. I should just... The screen showed 3 texts from Sarah, her only friend from her old life, the one person who knew where she'd gone. Don't come back to the city. Not today. Victor knows you're in town. Get out. Now. The phone slipped from Lena's numb fingers, clattering on Morrison's polished desk. Her heart hammered against her ribs as the implications crashed over her. Victor knew. Somehow, despite all her precautions, he knew she was here. Ms. Ward? Morrison's voice seemed to come from very far away. Are you all right? You've gone very pale. Lena opened her mouth to answer, but the words died in her throat as the office door swung open without warning. Morrison shot to his feet. Excuse me, you can't just... But the man who filled the doorway didn't acknowledge the lawyer's protest. His eyes, dark, intense, and achingly familiar, locked onto Lena with the force of a physical impact. Victor Moretti stood in the entrance to James Morrison's office like a king surveying his kingdom, and for a moment that stretched into eternity, the only sound in the room was Lena's ragged breathing. He looked exactly as she remembered and somehow completely different. The sharp suit, the powerful build, the dangerous grace in every movement, all familiar. But there was something in his face that hadn't been there before, something harder and colder, like the 2 years had carved away whatever softness she'd once imagined in him. Lena. Her name on his lips was a statement, an accusation, a question all at once. She couldn't move, couldn't speak. The baby kicked frantically inside her, as if sensing the sudden spike in her adrenaline, and she saw the exact moment Victor's gaze dropped from her face to her belly. The change in his expression was immediate and catastrophic. The cold control shattered, replaced by something raw and primal, that made her breath catch in her throat. His eyes widened, then narrowed, and his hands, those hands that had once held her with such tenderness and had also ended lives with brutal efficiency, clenched into fists at his sides. "Mr. Moretti," Morrison began, his voice professionally firm despite the tension crackling through the air, "this is a private meeting. I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Victor didn't look at the lawyer, his eyes still fixed on Lena's stomach like he could see through fabric and flesh to the child growing inside her. "Now!" Morrison's jaw tightened. "This is my office, and I don't take orders from James." Victor's voice dropped to a tone that Lena remembered too well, the one that preceded violence. "You have 30 seconds to walk out of this room. If you're still here when I'm done counting, you won't walk out at all." The lawyer looked at Lena, clearly torn between professional obligation and self-preservation. She managed to nod, a tiny movement that felt like surrender. "I'll be right outside, Chet," Morrison said quietly, gathering the unsigned divorce papers. "If you need anything—" The door clicked shut behind him, and Lena was alone with the man she'd spent 2 years running from. Victor moved into the room with predatory grace, crossing to the windows before turning to face her. The afternoon sun backlit him, making it hard to see his expression clearly, but she could feel the intensity of his gaze like heat against her skin. 8 months, he said, his voice carefully controlled. "You've been gone for 24 months. Which means, Victor, don't." The single word cracked like a whip. "Don't you dare say my name like we're old friends catching up. Don't you dare stand there carrying my child and pretend you have any right to speak first." Lena's hands tightened protectively over her belly. "You don't know." "I don't know?" He laughed, a sound completely devoid of humor. "I don't know that my wife disappeared in the middle of the night 2 years ago? I don't know that I tore this entire city apart looking for you? I don't know that I've had people searching every corner of this country trying to find any trace of you?" He took a step closer, and she saw his hands trembling before he shoved them into his pockets. "What I didn't know," he continued, his voice dropping to something more dangerous than anger, "was that you were pregnant when you left. Or did that happen after? Is there someone else, Lena? Is that why you ran? Because you found someone safer, someone cleaner, someone who doesn't have blood on his hands? It's yours." The words escaped before she could stop them, driven by a need she didn't understand to make him know the truth, even as every instinct screamed at her to lie. Victor went absolutely still. "What did you say?" "The baby is yours." Lena's voice steadied as she met his eyes. "I was 6 weeks pregnant when I left. I didn't know. I found out later." "You found out later?" He repeated the words slowly, like he was testing them for truth. "And you didn't think I had a right to know? You didn't think that maybe, just maybe, I deserved to hear that I was going to be a father? You gave up that right when you became a murderer." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and unforgivable. Lena watched Victor's face close down, all emotion draining away until he looked like the man from her nightmares, cold, calculating, deadly. "A murderer," he repeated softly. "Is that what you think I am?" "I know what you are, Victor. I saw—" Her voice broke, the memory of that night still vivid despite the time that had passed. "I saw you kill that man. Over nothing. Over a perceived insult." "Over nothing." Victor's laugh was bitter. "That man put a gun to your head, Lena. He threatened to carve you up and send you back to me in pieces because I refused to partner with his organization. But sure, let's call it nothing." Lena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "That's not—" "You said it was about territory, about respect. I said what I needed to say to keep you from panicking." Victor moved closer, and she saw something flash in his eyes that might have been pain. "That man was a threat to you. Every decision I made, every deal, every territorial expansion, it was all to build walls high enough that people like him couldn't touch you." "That's not true." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. She'd been so young when they met, so naive about the world Victor inhabited. She'd believed everything at face value, never looking deeper. "Believe what you want." Victor's voice hardened again. "You've apparently gotten good at creating your own version of reality. 2 years, Lena. 2 years you've kept me from my child. 2 years you've let me think you were dead, or worse. Do you have any idea what that did to me? You would have found me. The words burst out, carried on a wave of fear and frustration. You would have tracked me down and dragged me back into that life. And I won't raise a child in a world where violence is normal, where death is just another Tuesday, where her father loves her mother enough to burn the whole world down to keep her safe. Victor's voice dropped to a whisper. Is that so terrible, Lena? The baby kicked hard, and Lena gasped, her hand flying to her side. Victor's eyes tracked the movement with an intensity that made her feel exposed, vulnerable. Is it a girl? He asked, and for the first time since he'd walked into the office, she heard something other than anger in his voice, something that sounded almost like wonder. Lena hesitated, then nodded. Yes. And she's healthy. You've been getting proper medical care. Of course I have. I'm not... She stopped herself, but the implication hung in the air anyway. I'm not stupid. I'm not careless. Victor's jaw tightened. Where have you been staying? How have you been supporting yourself? Who's been taking care of you? That's none of your business. The hell it isn't? His control finally snapped, voice rising. You're carrying my daughter, Lena. My daughter. That makes everything about you my business. No. Lena forced herself to stand, using the chair for support. No, Victor. You don't get to storm back into my life and start making demands. You don't get to pretend that you have any claim on this baby just because... She broke off, swaying slightly. The room tilted and she grabbed for the chair, but her fingers slipped. Victor was there before she could fall, his arms catching her with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. He lowered her back into the chair, one hand supporting her back, the other checking her pulse at her wrist with practiced efficiency. When did you last eat? His voice had shifted entirely, the anger replaced by sharp concern. This morning, on the plane. That was 6 hours ago. He pulled out his phone, already dialing. You're 8 months pregnant, Lena. You can't go 6 hours without eating. I'm fine. It's just, don't tell me you're fine when you're about to pass out. He spoke into the phone without looking away from her. Marco. I'm at Morrison and Associates on 42. I need food here in 10 minutes. Something light, easy to digest. Fruit, protein, nothing too heavy. And water, lots of water. A pause. I don't care what meeting you're in. 10 minutes. He ended the call and crouched in front of her chair, bringing his eyes level with hers. This close, she could see the lines of strain around his mouth, the shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Tell me the truth, he said quietly. Have you been taking care of yourself? Or have you been so busy running from me that you've been neglecting the baby? I would never neglect her. Fury gave Lena strength. Every single decision I've made has been about keeping her safe. That's why I left. That's why I stayed gone. Not because I don't... She stopped herself, but it was too late. Because you don't what? Victor's eyes searched her face. Don't care about me? Don't miss what we had? Don't still love me despite everything? Lena looked away, unable to hold his gaze. It doesn't matter what I feel. Love isn't enough when the person you love terrifies you. She felt him flinch, though he didn't move. I never meant to scare you, he said finally. Everything I did to protect you, to protect us. By killing people? By building an empire on blood and fear? By ensuring that no one would ever dare to touch you. His voice roughened with emotion. You think I wanted this life? You think I chose to be what I am? I was born into this world, Lena. It's all I've ever known. But when I met you, I thought maybe... He stood abruptly, turning away to face the windows. It doesn't matter. You made your choice. You decided I wasn't worth the risk. It wasn't about worth, Lena said softly. It was about safety. Our daughter's safety. Our daughter. He repeated the words like a prayer or a curse. What's her name? She doesn't have one yet. I wanted to meet her first. Victor was quiet for a long moment, his silhouette dark against the bright city beyond. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully neutral. What happens now? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither of them was ready to address. Lena opened her mouth to answer, but before she could speak, the office door burst open. Morrison stood in the doorway, his face flushed. Mr. Moretti, I really must insist that you... Not now, James. I'm afraid I have to insist. There are men in my reception area who are making my staff extremely uncomfortable. They're carrying—" Morrison lowered his voice. "They're armed, Victor, inside my office. I can't have that." Victor sighed. "They're my security. They go where I go. Then I'm going to have to ask you all to leave." Before Victor could respond, one of the armed men appeared behind Morrison, tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that had seen too much violence to ever look truly peaceful. "Boss," he said urgently, "we've got a problem." Victor's entire demeanor shifted, the concerned, almost father disappearing behind the mask of the Mafia boss. "What kind of problem?" "The Calabrese family. They've got men positioned in the building across the street, sniper rifles. They know you're here." The words seemed to suck all the air from the room. Lena felt ice flood her veins as understanding crashed over her. This was Victor's world, a world where business meetings came with armed security, where rival families waited for opportunities to strike, where violence was always one wrong move away. "How many?" Victor's voice was clipped, professional. "At least 3 confirmed positions. Probably more we haven't spotted." They'd never risk a hit in broad daylight in the financial district, too much exposure. But even as Victor said it, Lena could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing probabilities, assessing threats. "They might if they're desperate enough," the security guard, Marco, Lena realized, replied. "Word is the Calabrese family lost their shipment last week. They're bleeding money and looking for someone to blame." Victor cursed under his breath. He turned to Lena, and she saw something in his face that made her breath catch. Fear. Not for himself, but for her. "We need to move you," he said. "Now." "Move me where?" "Victor, I have a flight in 3 hours. I just need to—" "Your flight is canceled." He was already pulling out his phone again. "You're not going anywhere until I know it's safe. You don't get to make that decision for me. Watch me." He gestured to Marco. "Get the car brought around to the underground garage. Call ahead and make sure the route is clear. And get Tony to sweep the stairwells. I don't want any surprises." Marco nodded and disappeared. Victor turned to Morrison, who still stood in the doorway looking shell-shocked. "James, I'm going to need you to keep this floor clear for the next 20 minutes. Can you do that?" "Victor, what is going on? Are we in danger?" "No, but Lena is, which means she needs to leave, quietly." Morrison's eyes widened. "Should I call the police?" "The police can't help with this." Victor's tone made it clear the subject was closed. 20 minutes, James, that's all I need." The lawyer looked at Lena, clearly conflicted. "Ms. Ward, do you want me to call someone?" Lena looked at Victor, at the hard set of his jaw and the protective stance of his body between her and the windows, and felt something crack inside her chest. She'd spent 2 years telling herself that leaving had been the right choice, that Victor's world was too dangerous for any child. But seeing him now, watching the way he was already calculating how to keep her safe, she couldn't help but remember all the reasons she'd fallen in love with him in the first place. "It's okay," she heard herself say. "I'll go with him." "Lena," Morrison began. "It's okay," she repeated, though she wasn't sure if she was trying to convince him or herself. Victor's hand was warm and steady on her elbow as he helped her to her feet. "Can you walk?" "I'm pregnant, not broken." "That's not what I asked." Despite everything, despite the fear and the anger and the confusion, Lena felt a smile tug at her lips. "Yes, Victor, I can walk." "Good. Stay close to me." He pulled off his suit jacket and draped it around her shoulders. "Keep your head down." They moved into the hallway, where 3 more armed men had materialized. Lena recognized none of them, but they all had the same look. Hard eyes, careful movements, hands never far from concealed weapons. "Stairs," Victor ordered. "Marco and Tony in front, Dante and Leo behind. Stay tight." The group moved as one unit toward the emergency stairwell. Lena's heart hammered as they entered the concrete shaft, their footsteps echoing in the confined space. Victor kept one hand on her back, guiding her, supporting her, ready to catch her if she stumbled. "Why?" she asked as they descended. "Why would the Calabrese family want to hurt you now?" "It's not about wanting, it's about needing." Victor's voice was low, meant only for her ears. "I've been distracted for 2 years, Lena. Looking for you. That distraction made me vulnerable. And in my world, vulnerability is blood in the water. So this is my fault. This is no one's fault but mine. I should have been more careful. His hand tightened on her back. But I couldn't stop looking. Even when everyone told me you were probably dead, I couldn't stop. They reached the underground garage, and Lena was immediately struck by the smell of exhaust and concrete. A sleek black SUV waited with its engine running, flanked by two more identical vehicles. Victor opened the rear door. "Get in." Lena hesitated, one hand on the doorframe. "If I get in this car, where are you taking me?" "Somewhere safe." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you right now." Victor's eyes met hers, and she saw exhaustion there, and determination, and something that might have been desperation. "Please, Lena, I know you don't trust me. I know you think I'm a monster, but for once, just this once, trust that I would die before I let anything happen to you or our daughter." The baby kicked, as if weighing in on the decision. Lena took a breath and climbed into the SUV. Victor slid in beside her, immediately putting himself between her and the window. Marco took the driver's seat while Tony rode shotgun. The other two vehicles fell into position in front and behind as they pulled out of the garage. For several blocks, no one spoke. Lena watched the city slide past, familiar and strange at the same time. She'd loved this place once, had imagined building a life here with Victor. Now it felt like foreign territory, full of hidden dangers she'd been naive enough to ignore the first time around. "Where are we going?" she asked finally. "My apartment. It's the most secure location I have on short notice." "Your apartment?" Lena couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. "You mean the penthouse I used to live in? The one I left in the middle of the night because I couldn't stand to be there anymore? It's been remodeled." Victor stared straight ahead. "You won't recognize it." "That's not the point." "Then what is the point, Lena?" He turned to face her, and she saw the careful controls starting to fracture. "What exactly do you want from me right now? You want me to apologize for keeping you safe? You want me to say I'm sorry for being what I am? I can't change my past, and I can't change what I've done. All I can do is try to keep you alive long enough to sign those divorce papers you want so badly. And then what? You'll just let me go? Let me disappear again with your daughter?" Victor's laugh was harsh. "You really think I could do that? You really think I could know about her and just let you walk away? You don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, Lena. You made yours when you left. Now I'm making mine." Before she could ask what that meant, her phone buzzed again. She pulled it out to find another text from Sarah. "Did you get out? Please tell me you're safe." Lena typed back quickly. "I'm with Victor. Don't worry." The response came almost immediately. "That's exactly what I'm worried about." Lena almost smiled despite the situation. Sarah had never trusted Victor, had warned her from the beginning that men like him didn't change, didn't soften, didn't become safe no matter how much you loved them. And she'd been right, in a way. Victor was still dangerous, still powerful, still everything she'd run from. But as she felt his presence beside her in the car, solid and protective, she couldn't help but wonder if Sarah had been wrong about one thing. Maybe Victor hadn't changed, but maybe, just maybe, Lena had been wrong about what that meant. The SUV pulled into another underground garage, this one clearly private and heavily secured. Guards nodded to Victor as they passed, their eyes sweeping over the vehicle with professional thoroughness. "Stay in the car until we've swept the building," Victor ordered. "Marco, take point. I want every floor checked before we move her." "Victor, this is ridiculous," Lena protested. "You said this place was secure." "Secure isn't the same as safe. Not anymore." He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages with a frown. "The Calabrese family isn't the only problem. Word is out that I was at Morrison's office. Every crew in the city is going to be wondering why." "So this is what your life is like now? Constant paranoia? Always looking over your shoulder?" "This is what my life has always been like," Victor said quietly. "You just never saw it before. I made sure you didn't have to." Lena wanted to argue, to tell him that she'd seen plenty, that she'd known exactly what he was. But looking at him now, at the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes never stopped moving, cataloging threats and exits, she realized he might be right. She'd seen the surface of his world, the glamorous parties and expensive gifts. She'd never seen the machinery underneath, the constant vigilance required to survive. Marco's voice crackled through the radio. "Building's clear, boss. We're good to move." Victor opened the door and stepped out, then offered his hand to Lena. She took it, letting him help her out of the car, acutely aware of how much effort the simple movement required. Her back ached, her feet were swollen, and the baby seemed determined to practice gymnastics against her ribs. "How are you feeling?" Victor asked, his eyes searching her face. "Tired. Sore. Pregnant." She attempted a weak smile. "The usual." "When's the last time you saw a doctor?" 2 weeks ago. Everything was fine." 2 weeks is too long. We're getting you checked out tonight." "Victor, not negotiable, Lena. You can hate me all you want, but you're going to let me make sure you and the baby are healthy." They entered a private elevator, and Lena watched the floor numbers climb. 48, 49, 50. The penthouse level. She'd lived here once in what felt like another lifetime. She'd decorated it, hosted dinners, made love to Victor in nearly every room. The elevator doors opened directly into the apartment, and Lena caught her breath. Victor hadn't been lying. The space was completely different. Where before it had been warm and lived in, full of color and personality, now it was stark and minimalist. Black, white, and gray dominated, with clean lines and almost no personal touches. It looked like a place where someone existed, but didn't live. "What happened to all the furniture?" Lena asked, stepping into the vast living room. "I got rid of it." Victor moved past her toward the kitchen. "Sit down. I'll get you something to eat." "Victor, wait." She caught his arm. "What do you mean you got rid of it? All of it?" He didn't turn to face her. "After you left, I couldn't stand looking at it. Everything reminded me of you, so I had it all removed." The admission hung in the air between them. Lena slowly lowered herself onto the modern gray couch, her mind reeling. She'd imagined many things in the 2 years since she'd left, but she'd never pictured Victor alone in this massive apartment, surrounded by ghosts. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "Don't." He finally turned, and the look on his face made her chest tighten. "Don't apologize for leaving a life that terrified you. Don't apologize for doing what you thought was right. Just—" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she remembered well. "Just let me take care of you while you're here. That's all I'm asking." Before Lena could respond, the baby delivered a particularly strong kick that made her gasp and press her hand to her side. Victor was beside her in an instant. "What's wrong? Is it the baby?" "She's just active." Lena managed a tight smile. "She does this sometimes." "Can I—" Victor hesitated, his hand hovering over her belly. "Can I feel?" The question, asked with such careful vulnerability, broke something inside Lena's carefully constructed walls. She took his hand and placed it where the baby was moving, watching his face as he felt his daughter kick for the first time. The transformation in his expression was stunning. Wonder, fear, joy, and something that looked almost like grief flickered across his features in rapid succession. When he looked up at Lena, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "She's real," he whispered. "I knew it intellectually, but feeling her—" His voice broke. "She's real," Lena confirmed, "and she's stubborn and strong, and she never lets me sleep, and I think she's going to have your eyes." Victor's laugh was choked. "How can you possibly know that?" "I just do." And somehow, impossibly, Lena found herself smiling. "I've spent months imagining what she'll look like, and every version has your eyes." They stayed like that for a long moment, Victor's hand on Lena's belly, the baby moving between them like a bridge across 2 years of silence and separation. Then Victor's phone buzzed and reality crashed back in. He checked the screen and swore. "We have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where the Calabrese family just put a bounty on your head." He was already moving, pulling out his phone to make calls. "Marco, I need full lockdown protocols. Now!" Lena felt the blood drain from her face. "Why would they?" "Because they know you matter to me. Because hurting you is the best way to hurt me." Victor's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "Because I've been too distracted to properly defend my territory, and they see an opening." "This is exactly what I was afraid of." Lena struggled to her feet, anger overriding fear. "This is why I left, Victor. I knew that being with you meant being a target. I knew that anyone you cared about was in danger just by existing." "You think I don't know that?" Victor spun to face her. "You think I haven't spent every day since you left trying to build enough power that no one would dare come after you? But you took that choice away from me, Lena. You left without warning, without explanation, and I've spent 2 years not knowing if you were alive or dead while trying to hold together an empire that's been crumbling without my full attention. That's not my fault. I never said it was. He took a breath, visibly fighting for control. But it is reality, and the reality is that you're here now, carrying my child, and there are people who would kill you just to prove they can get to me, so like it or not, you're staying here where I can protect you. You can't keep me prisoner, Victor. Watch me. His eyes were hard, implacable. You want to hate me? Fine. Hate me. But you're going to stay alive to do it. Lena opened her mouth to argue, but before she could speak, a wave of dizziness washed over her. The room tilted and she felt herself falling. Victor caught her before she hit the ground, his arms strong and sure around her. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was his voice, rough with panic, shouting for a doctor. The last thing she thought was that maybe Sarah had been right all along. Maybe love wasn't enough when the person you loved lived in a world where violence was currency and safety was just another illusion. But as consciousness faded with Victor's heart beating against her ear and the baby still moving inside her, she couldn't help but wonder if running had ever really been an option at all. Lena woke to the sound of voices arguing in low, urgent tones. Her head throbbed, and for a disorienting moment she couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came rushing back: Victor, the penthouse, the bounty, the moment when her body had simply given up under the weight of too much stress and too little care. She opened her eyes to find herself in an unfamiliar bedroom, lying on what felt like the most comfortable mattress she'd touched in 2 years. The room was done in the same stark minimalist style as the rest of the apartment, all clean lines and muted colors, but someone had dimmed the lights to a soft glow that didn't hurt her eyes. The arguing voices grew clear as her mind sharpened. One was Victor, tight with barely controlled fury. The other was unfamiliar, professional, and calm. "I don't care what you have to cancel," Victor was saying. "She needs to be examined, now." "Mr. Moretti, I understand your concern, but moving a woman in her condition right now could be dangerous. She needs rest, hydration, and then you rest her and hydrate her here. You're a doctor, aren't you? Do your job." Lena turned her head to see them standing in the doorway, Victor with his arms crossed and his jaw set in that stubborn line she knew too well, and a woman in her 50s wearing slacks and a professional blouse, her gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. "I'm awake," Lena said, her voice coming out rougher than she intended. Both of them turned immediately. Victor crossed to the bed in 3 long strides, his face transforming from angry to concerned in an instant. "How are you feeling?" He sat on the edge of the mattress, his hand automatically reaching for her wrist to check her pulse. "Like I fainted in front of a Mafia boss and his entire security team." Lena managed a weak smile. "How long was I out?" 20 minutes. The doctor approached from the other side, pulling a stethoscope from her bag. "I'm Dr. Helen Chen. Mr. Moretti called me to check on you and the baby. May I?" Lena nodded, and Dr. Chen began a swift but thorough examination, checking her pulse, her blood pressure, listening to her heart, and then pressing the stethoscope against her belly to find the baby's heartbeat. The sound filled the room, quick and strong, a galloping rhythm that made Lena's eyes burn with sudden tears. She'd heard it at every appointment, but somehow, in this moment, it felt different, more real. She glanced at Victor and saw him frozen, his eyes fixed on her belly where Dr. Chen's stethoscope rested, his expression one of absolute wonder, mixed with something that looked like pain. "Strong heartbeat," Dr. Chen said with approval. "Baby sounds healthy, but you, Miss Ward, are dehydrated and your blood pressure is elevated. When did you last have a full meal?" "Yesterday." The admission felt shameful. "I didn't have much appetite on the flight." "And before that?" Lena hesitated. It's been hard to keep food down the past few weeks." Dr. Chen's eyes sharpened. "Morning sickness at 8 months is unusual. Have you mentioned this to your regular obstetrician?" "I don't exactly have a regular obstetrician." Lena felt Victor's gaze on her and couldn't meet his eyes. "I've been going to a community clinic, different doctors each time." "Community clinic?" Victor's voice was dangerously quiet. "You've been getting prenatal care at a community clinic?" It was all I could afford. The words burst out defensively. I was working as a waitress, Victor. I didn't exactly have health insurance or the money for a private practice. You're my wife. You have access to the best medical care in the country. I stopped being your wife the moment I walked out that door 2 years ago. Dr. Chen cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps we could focus on the present situation? Miss Ward, I'd like to run some blood work and do an ultrasound. Based on what you've told me and your current symptoms, I'm concerned about preeclampsia. The word sent ice through Lena's veins. She knew enough to understand that preeclampsia was serious, potentially life-threatening for both mother and baby. How serious? Victor asked, his hand finding Lena's and gripping it tightly. Potentially very serious if left untreated. But if it is preeclampsia, we've caught it early enough that we can manage it. Dr. Chen began setting up her equipment. The priority is reducing your stress levels, ensuring proper nutrition and hydration, and monitoring both you and the baby closely. She'll have around-the-clock care, Victor said immediately. Whatever she needs. Victor, I can't stay here. Yes, you can. His tone left no room for argument. Unless you want to risk our daughter's life to prove a point. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to insist that she could take care of herself the way she had for 2 years, but the fear in her chest, the memory of the dizziness, and the way her body had simply shut down kept the words trapped in her throat. Dr. Chen spent the next hour running tests. She drew blood, performed an ultrasound that showed their daughter moving and healthy despite everything, and asked detailed questions about Lena's medical history and her living situation for the past 2 years. With each answer Lena gave, the long hours on her feet at the diner, the tiny apartment with no air conditioning, the nights she'd skipped meals to save money, she felt Victor's tension ratcheting higher beside her. He didn't say anything, but she could see his jaw working, his hands clenching and unclenching like he was fighting the urge to put his fist through something. All right, Dr. Chen said finally, packing up her equipment. The good news is that your blood pressure, while elevated, isn't in the danger zone yet. The ultrasound shows the baby is developing well, though she is measuring slightly small for her gestational age, likely due to your nutritional deficits. What's the bad news? Lena asked. The bad news is that you're on bed rest for the next week minimum. Complete bed rest, Miss Ward. That means no stress, no exertion, and definitely no traveling. Your body has been under tremendous strain, and if you don't give it time to recover, you could go into premature labor. A week. Lena's mind raced. I can't stay here for a week. You don't have a choice. Victor's voice was flat, brooking no argument. Dr. Chen, what does she need? The doctor handed him a list. Prenatal vitamins, iron supplements, a high-protein diet with plenty of fruits and vegetables, and at least 8 glasses of water a day. I'll come back tomorrow to check on her, and we'll do daily monitoring for the next week. If her condition improves, we can discuss next steps. And if it doesn't improve, then we'll need to consider hospitalization and possibly inducing labor early. Dr. Chen's expression was serious. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now, rest is the best medicine. After the doctor left with a promise to return the next morning, Lena and Victor sat in silence. The weight of everything, the diagnosis, the forced proximity, the reality of their situation pressed down on them like a physical thing. You should have told me, Victor said finally. When you found out you were pregnant, you should have told me. So you could do what? Lock me up in a gilded cage and make sure I never had a choice about my own life? So I could make sure you weren't working yourself to exhaustion while carrying my child. His control finally snapped, voice rising. So I could ensure you had proper medical care and weren't living in some apartment with no air conditioning in the middle of summer. So I could... He stopped, taking a breath. So I could take care of you, the way I should have been allowed to from the beginning. I didn't want your money, Victor. I didn't want to owe you anything. She's my daughter, Lena. Taking care of her mother isn't about owing, it's about... He stood abruptly, pacing to the window. You really think I'm that much of a monster? You really think I would have forced you to stay if you wanted to go? You're forcing me to stay now. To save your life, to save our daughter's life. He spun to face her. That's not the same thing as keeping you prisoner. Isn't it? Lena struggled to sit up against the pillows. You said it yourself. I can't leave. I'm here for a week minimum, trapped in your apartment under your control. Under my protection. Victor's voice dropped to something more dangerous. There's a difference, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. The only reason I need protection is because of you. Because being connected to you makes me a target. Being connected to me also means you have resources. It means our daughter will never go hungry, never lack for anything, never have to worry about... He stopped himself, jaw tight. Never have to worry about what? Lena pressed. What are you not saying? Victor was quiet for a long moment, his back to her as he stared out at the city lights. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it all day. I grew up hungry, Lena. Not the kind of hungry where you miss a meal and your stomach grumbles. The kind where you go days without eating because there's nothing in the house, and your mother is too high to remember she has a son to feed. Lena's breath caught. In all the time they'd been together, Victor had never spoken about his childhood, had deflected every question with charm or silence. I was 8 years old when Antonio Moretti found me trying to steal from one of his warehouses, Victor continued. I was so weak from hunger I could barely run when his men chased me down. He should have killed me. That's what his men expected, but instead he took me home, fed me, and eventually adopted me. Victor, I'm not telling you this for sympathy. He finally turned to face her. I'm telling you so you understand why I do what I do. Antonio gave me everything, a name, a family, a future. But he also taught me that in our world, power is the only thing that keeps you safe, the only thing that ensures the people you love don't end up dead in an alley somewhere. So you became like him. I became what I needed to be to survive, and later, to protect you. His eyes met hers. Every deal I made, every territory I claimed, every alliance I forged, it was all to build walls high enough that no one could touch you. That you could live in our apartment and go shopping and have lunch with your friends without ever having to look over your shoulder. But I did have to look over my shoulder, Lena said quietly, because no matter how high you built those walls, I could still see the blood on your hands. Victor flinched like she'd struck him. That man I killed, the one you witnessed, he had already killed 3 people that week trying to get to me. He told me explicitly that he was going to hurt you, Lena. Describe in detail what he was going to do to you. And you're right. I didn't hesitate. I didn't try to negotiate or find a peaceful solution. I put a bullet in his head because he threatened my wife. The raw honesty in his voice made Lena's throat tight. You lied to me about it. You said it was about business. Because I didn't want you to carry the weight of knowing that someone died because of you, I wanted to protect you from that too. He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Maybe that was wrong. Maybe I should have been honest from the start. But I was trying to give you a normal life, Lena. I was trying to let you exist in my world without being consumed by it. That's not possible, though, is it? Lena's hand moved to her belly. Your world doesn't allow for normal. It doesn't allow for safe. That's why I left. And look where that got you. Living in poverty, working yourself sick, getting substandard medical care. Victor's voice hardened. You think you were safer away from me? You think our daughter was better off with you struggling alone than she would have been with both parents and every resource at our disposal? At least away from you, the only person trying to hurt me was myself. Not entire crime families looking for leverage. The words hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Victor's face closed down, and Lena immediately regretted the harshness of her tone. I'm sorry, she said. That was... true. Victor's laugh was bitter. Don't apologize for honesty, Lena. You're right. My world is dangerous. It's violent and unpredictable, and the people in it don't hesitate to use the ones we love as weapons against us. He moved back to the bed, sitting on the edge but not touching her. But here's the thing you need to understand. That danger doesn't disappear just because you're not physically near me. The moment the Calabrese family found out you were in the city, they started putting pieces together. By now they know you're pregnant. They know the timing lines up. And they know that hurting you is the best way to hurt me. Fear coiled in Lena's stomach. How would they know the timing? Because they've been watching me for 2 years, wondering why I was distracted, why I wasn't expanding territory like I should have been, why I turned down lucrative opportunities. His eyes met hers. They know I was looking for someone, and now they know who. So what are you saying, that I can never be safe? That our daughter can never be safe? I'm saying that safety is relative, And right now, the safest place for both of you is here, with me. Before Lena could respond, there was a knock at the door. Victor's entire body tensed, his hand moving automatically to the gun she now noticed at his hip. "Boss?" Marco's voice came through the door. "We've got a situation." Victor was on his feet immediately. "Stay here," he ordered Lena. "Don't move from this bed." "Victor, what's happening?" "Just stay here." He was already moving toward the door, his whole demeanor shifting into something harder, more dangerous. Lena watched him go, her heart pounding. She could hear voices in the other room, urgent and low. The baby kicked, as if sensing her anxiety, and she placed both hands on her belly. "It's okay," she whispered. "We're okay. We have to be." The minutes stretched out, each one longer than the last. Lena strained to hear what was happening, but the voices had moved too far away. She considered getting up, going to find out what was wrong. But Dr. Chen's warnings about bed rest kept her in place. When Victor finally returned, his face was grim. "What is it?" Lena asked. "What's wrong?" "The Calabrese family just hit one of my warehouses, burned it to the ground." He moved to the window, looking out at the city. "They're sending a message." "What kind of message?" "That they know you're here, that they're willing to escalate." His hands clenched into fists. "They want me to know that nothing I have is safe." Lena felt sick. "This is because of me. This is because of them." Victor's voice was hard. "Because they're desperate and stupid enough to think they can take what's mine." "I'm not yours, Victor." He turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "Aren't you? You're carrying my child. You're in my home. You're under my protection." "What exactly would you call that? Temporary?" The word felt like a lie even as she said it. "We'll see." He pulled out his phone, already dialing. "I need to make some calls. Make sure the building's security is airtight. Will you be okay here for a bit?" Lena wanted to say no, wanted to demand that he stay and explain everything. But the exhaustion pulling at her was too strong, and the baby's movements had finally settled into something calmer. "I'll be fine," she said. "Just be careful." Something flickered in Victor's eyes, surprise, maybe, or hope. "Always am?" After he left, Lena lay in the unfamiliar bed, listening to the sounds of the penthouse. She could hear Victor's voice, low and commanding, issuing orders. She could hear footsteps, Marco and the other guards, she assumed, securing the space. And underneath it all, she could hear the city, that constant background hum of life that never stopped. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, someone was gently shaking her shoulder. She opened her eyes to find Victor standing over her with a tray. "You need to eat," he said simply. Lena struggled to sit up, and Victor helped her, adjusting the pillows behind her back with surprising gentleness. The tray held soup, bread, fruit, and a large glass of water. "I'm not really hungry. I don't care." Victor settled into the chair beside the bed. Dr. Chen said high-protein diet. "You're eating." There was something almost absurd about the situation. A Mafia boss turned nursemaid, watching over her with the same intensity he probably brought to business negotiations. Despite everything, Lena felt her lips twitch. "What?" Victor asked, noticing. "Nothing. Just, this is surreal." "Which part? The part where you're carrying my baby? The part where someone put a bounty on your head? Or the part where I'm trying to get you to eat soup?" "All of it." Lena picked up the spoon, more to appease him than because she actually wanted food. But the first taste of the soup, rich chicken broth with vegetables and noodles, made her realize how hungry she actually was. Victor watched her eat with an expression she couldn't quite read. After a few minutes of silence, he spoke. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Lena's hand stilled on the spoon. "Okay? If I could guarantee your safety and our daughter's safety, would you stay?" The question caught her off guard. "Stay where?" "Here?" "In the city. In my life." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "If I could prove to you that I could keep you both safe, would you give us another chance?" Lena set down the spoon, her appetite suddenly gone. "Victor, it's not that simple." "Why not? You loved me once before that night. We were happy. We were living in a fantasy, Lena said quietly. I was pretending your world wasn't what it was, and you were pretending you could keep me separate from it. But that night shattered the illusion. So there's nothing I could do? Nothing that would make you trust me again? Lena looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the exhaustion in the lines around his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands trembled slightly before he clasped them together. This wasn't the confident, controlled man she'd married. This was someone who'd been pushed to his limits and was barely holding on. I don't know, she said honestly. I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if I can live in a world where our daughter might become collateral damage in someone's vendetta. I don't know anything anymore except that I'm scared and tired and I want our baby to be safe. Then let me keep her safe. Let me keep you both safe. For how long? A week? A month? What happens when Doctor Chen says I'm well enough to travel? Do you really think you can just let us go? Victor was quiet for a long moment. No, he said finally. No, I don't think I can. The honesty of it should have terrified her. Instead, Lena felt something almost like relief that he wasn't trying to lie or manipulate her into staying. So we're at an impasse, she said. Maybe. Or maybe... Victor stood, pacing to the window again. Maybe there's another option. What option? I could step back, from the business, from the territory, from all of it. He said it like he was testing the words, seeing how they felt. I could walk away. Lena stared at him in disbelief. You can't be serious. Why not? Other men have done it. Retired. Disappeared. Started over. Other men who weren't Victor Moretti, you're too powerful, too connected. They'd never let you just walk away. They wouldn't have a choice. He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that looked almost like desperation. I've spent 2 years barely holding things together while looking for you. I'm already halfway out, whether I wanted to be or not. The Calabrese family hitting my warehouse? That's because they smell weakness. They know I'm not as invested as I used to be. So you'd give it all up? The power, the control, everything you've built? For you? For our daughter? Victor moved back to the bed, kneeling beside it so his eyes were level with hers. In a heartbeat, Lena's breath caught. She wanted to believe him, wanted to think that love could be enough to pull someone out of that life. But she'd seen too much, lived through too much to trust in fairy tale endings. It's not that simple, Victor. You can't just decide to leave and expect everyone to let you go peacefully. I know, which is why I'd need time to do it right. To make sure all the pieces are in place so that when we leave, no one can follow. His hand found hers. But I could do it, Lena. If you gave me the chance, I could do it. And what about the enemies you'd make? The people who would see your retirement as betrayal or weakness? I'd handle them. Before we left, I'd make sure every loose end was tied up, every potential threat neutralized. You mean you'd kill them? Victor's jaw tightened. If necessary. And there it was, the fundamental difference between them. Victor saw violence as a tool, a means to an end. Lena saw it as a line that once crossed, changed you forever. I can't ask you to do that, she said quietly. I can't ask you to become even more of what I'm afraid of, just to make me feel safe. You're not asking, I'm offering. He squeezed her hand. Tell me what you need, Lena. Tell me what would make you feel safe enough to stay, and I'll make it happen. Lena pulled her hand away, exhaustion and emotion making her head swim. I need you to let me finish this soup and get some sleep. That's what I need right now. She could see him wanting to push, to keep talking until he got the answer he wanted. But something in her expression must have convinced him to back off, because he just nodded and stood. Finish eating. I'll be in the next room if you need anything. After he left, Lena picked up the soup again, forcing herself to take mechanical bites, even though every mouthful felt like sand. The baby moved restlessly inside her, and she wondered what kind of world she was bringing her daughter into. A world where her father was a mafia boss who would kill to protect them. A world where their safety came at the cost of other people's lives. A world where love and violence were so tangled together that you couldn't have one without the other. Or maybe, just maybe, a world where a man could choose to walk away from darkness for the sake of his family. Where redemption was possible, even for someone with blood on their hands. Lena didn't know which version of the future was real, But as she lay back against the pillows, her hand on her belly and the sound of Victor's voice drifting in from the other room, she realized that she was going to have to decide. Because in a week, maybe sooner, she'd be well enough to leave. And when that moment came, she'd have to choose between the safety of distance and the dangerous possibility that Victor might actually be able to change. The weight of that choice pressed down on her as she drifted toward sleep, heavy and inescapable as the baby growing inside her. 3 days passed in a strange rhythm that Lena had never experienced before. Dr. Chen came every morning, checking her vitals and pronouncing her slightly improved, but still on strict bed rest. Victor brought her meals at precise intervals, sat with her while she ate, and disappeared for hours at a time to handle business he never discussed in detail. The penthouse became a gilded cage that felt less confining with each passing day, and that scared her more than she wanted to admit. On the 4th morning, Lena woke to the sound of raised voices outside her bedroom door. She recognized Victor's tone immediately, cold, controlled fury that meant someone had crossed a line. "I don't care what he's offering," Victor was saying. "The answer is no." "Boss, with all due respect, we're bleeding money." That was Marco's voice, tense and urgent. "The Calabrese hit cost us $500,000 in product alone, and now they're pressuring our distribution channels. If we don't respond, we will respond, just not the way they expect." "What does that mean?" There was a long pause. Lena found herself holding her breath, straining to hear. "It means I'm done playing their game," Victor said finally. "Set up a meeting with Giovanni Calabrese. Neutral ground, tomorrow night." "That's suicide, boss. He'll never agree to meet without—" "He'll agree when you tell him I'm prepared to offer him everything he wants." The silence that followed was so complete that Lena wondered if they'd moved away. Then Marco spoke, his voice careful. "Everything? My territory, my connections, my supply lines, all of it." "Victor, what the hell are you doing?" "Something I should have done 2 years ago." Victor's voice was firm, resolute. "Make the call, Marco." Lena heard footsteps retreating, then the soft click of her bedroom door opening. She closed her eyes quickly, pretending to be asleep, but Victor's quiet laugh told her he wasn't fooled. "I know you're awake," he said, moving into the room. "You always scrunch your nose when you fake sleep." She opened her eyes to find him standing at the foot of the bed, still dressed in the clothes from the night before. Wrinkled shirt, loosened tie, exhaustion written in every line of his face. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked. "Not much. Had a lot to arrange." He sat in the chair beside her bed, the one that had become his permanent post over the past few days. "How are you feeling?" "Better? Stronger?" It was true. The rest and proper nutrition had worked wonders. She could feel her energy returning, the constant dizziness fading. "Victor, what I heard just now, you weren't supposed to hear that." "But I did. And I need to know what you're planning." Victor rubbed his eyes, a gesture so human and tired that it made Lena's chest ache. "I'm planning to get us out, all of us, you, me, our daughter, away from this city, away from this life. By giving Giovanni Calabrese everything you've built, it's the only way to make a clean break. If I just disappear, every crew in the city will be fighting over the scraps, and that fight will follow us wherever we go. But if I hand it over to someone with the power to hold it, someone who has no reason to come after us once he has what he wants—" Victor shrugged. "It's the closest thing to a peaceful exit I'm going to get." Lena struggled to sit up, and Victor immediately moved to help her, adjusting pillows and checking to make sure she was comfortable before settling back in his chair. "You're really serious about this," she said, "about walking away." "I told you I was." "But that was just talk. I didn't think you'd actually—" She broke off, unsure how to finish. "Victor, this is your entire life. Everything you've worked for, everything you've built. You can't just give it away. Watch me." His eyes met hers, steady and certain. "I've had 3 days to think about what matters, Lena. 3 days of bringing you meals and watching you sleep and feeling our daughter move under my hand when I check on you at night. 3 days of imagining a future where I get to do that every day without wondering if someone's going to put a bullet through the window. You've been checking on me at night?" A faint smile crossed his face. "Every few hours. I know Dr. Chen said you were stable, but I needed to see for myself." Something warm and dangerous bloomed in Lena's chest. She tried to push it down, to remind herself of all the reasons she'd left, but it was getting harder with every passing day. "What if Giovanni doesn't accept your offer?" she asked. "What if he sees it as weakness and decides to push for more? Then I'll deal with it. But I don't think he will. Giovanni's smart enough to recognize a gift when it's handed to him." Victor leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "This isn't about weakness, Lena. It's about choice. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing our daughter. I'm choosing a different kind of life. And what happens to the people who depend on you? Your men, the businesses they run, the families that rely on your protection? They'll transfer their loyalty to Giovanni. Most of them will probably be better off. He's more ambitious than I've been lately, more willing to expand." Victor's expression hardened slightly. "I'll make sure everyone who's been loyal to me is taken care of. No one gets left behind or caught in the transition." Lena wanted to believe it could be that simple, that Victor could just hand over an empire and walk away clean. But she'd seen enough of his world to know that nothing was ever that straightforward. "When is this meeting?" she asked. "Tomorrow night. And you're just going to walk in there and trust that Giovanni won't kill you on the spot?" "I'm going to walk in there with enough leverage that killing me would be the stupidest thing he could do." Victor pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. "I've spent the last 3 days documenting everything, every supplier, every distribution route, every corrupt official on our payroll, every weakness in our competitors' operations. It's all going to Giovanni, but only if he agrees to let us walk away safely. What if he agrees and then comes after us anyway once he has what he wants? He won't, because part of the deal is that I disappear so completely that I'm not worth finding." Victor's eyes met hers. New identities, new location, enough money to live comfortably, but not lavishly. We become normal people, Lena, the kind who worry about mortgage payments and their daughter's college fund, not about territory disputes and rival families. The picture he painted was so appealing, so normal, that Lena felt tears prick her eyes. She'd wanted exactly that when she left, a simple life, free from fear and violence. But she'd imagined achieving it alone, not with Victor by her side. "Why now?" she asked. "Why are you willing to do this now when you wouldn't even consider it 2 years ago?" Victor was quiet for a long moment, his gaze dropping to where her hands rested on her swollen belly. 2 years ago, I didn't know I was going to be a father," he said finally. 2 years ago, I thought I could have it all, the power, the control, and you safe beside me. I thought I was strong enough to protect you from every threat, smart enough to keep you separate from the darkness." He looked up, and the raw vulnerability in his eyes made Lena's breath catch. "But that night, when you saw me kill that man, I realized I'd failed. You looked at me with such fear, such horror, and I knew I'd lost you. I just didn't know how to stop it from happening. So you let me go." "I didn't let you go. You left, and I couldn't find you." His hands clenched. "But I'm not making the same mistake twice. This time, I'm not trying to keep both the life and the woman. I'm choosing the woman." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Lena felt the baby kick as if responding to the tension, and placed her hand over the movement. "She's active today," she said, needing to break the intensity of the moment. Victor's expression softened immediately. "Can I?" Lena nodded, and he moved to sit on the edge of the bed, placing his hand where hers had been. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and Victor's face transformed with wonder. "She's strong," he murmured. "She gets that from you." "And stubborn like her mother." Victor's smile was gentle, almost sad. "Have you thought about names?" "A few, but nothing feels right yet." Lena watched his face as he felt their daughter move. "What would you name her?" "Sophia. It means wisdom." He glanced up. "My mother's name was Sophia. She died when I was 6, but I remember she was kind, patient, everything Antonio wasn't." It was the most Victor had ever shared about his family, and Lena felt the weight of the trust he was placing in her. "Sophia," she repeated, testing the name. "Sophia Moretti. Or Sophia Ward, if that's what you want." Victor's hand stilled on her belly. "I meant what I said, Lena. I'll give you whatever you need to feel safe, even if that means our daughter doesn't carry my name." The offer should have felt like victory. Victor giving up his claim, his control. Instead, it felt like loss, like watching him carve away pieces of himself until there was nothing left of the man she'd fallen in love with. "I don't know what I want," Lena admitted. "A week ago, I was so sure. I was going to sign those divorce papers, go back to my life, and raise our daughter alone. But now you're trapped here with me, being forced to confront all the things you ran from. That's not fair. Isn't it?" Victor's smile was wry. "You wouldn't be here if you hadn't gotten sick. You wouldn't be talking to me if Dr. Chen hadn't ordered bed rest. Sometimes I think the universe has a sick sense of humor, forcing us together when you've worked so hard to stay apart." Before Lena could respond, there was a sharp knock at the door. Victor was on his feet instantly, his whole body tensing. "Boss," Marco's voice was urgent, "we have a problem." Victor moved to the door, opening it just enough to speak quietly with his second in command. Lena couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw Victor's shoulders tighten, saw the way his hand moved unconsciously toward the gun at his hip. When he turned back to her, his face was grim. "I need to go out for a few hours. Marco will be right outside the door, and there are guards on every entrance to the building. You'll be safe." "What's happening?" "Nothing you need to worry about. Just some business I need to handle before tomorrow night's meeting." He crossed to the bed, pressing a kiss to her forehead, a gesture so natural and familiar that Lena didn't think to pull away. "Rest. I'll be back before dinner." After he left, Lena lay in the quiet bedroom, her mind racing. She could hear Marco taking up his position outside the door, could hear the distant sounds of the city through the windows. Everything felt suspended, like the world was holding its breath waiting for something to break. She must have dozed off, because the next thing she knew, someone was shaking her shoulder urgently. She opened her eyes to find Marco standing over her, his face tight with tension. "Miss Ward, we need to move you, now." Fear spiked through her. "What's wrong? Where's Victor?" "He's handling a situation, but we just got word that the Calabrese family knows this location. They're planning to hit it tonight." Lena struggled to sit up, her heart pounding. "Hit it how?" "Doesn't matter. We need to get you somewhere safer." Marco was already moving around the room, grabbing a bag and tossing in clothes from the dresser. "Can you walk?" "Yes, but Dr. Chen said—" "Dr. Chen isn't here, and staying in this apartment could get you and the baby killed." Marco's tone was firm but not unkind. "We have a safe house across town. Victor's orders were to move you there if anything went wrong." Lena swung her legs over the side of the bed, her mind spinning. "How does the Calabrese family know where I am?" "Someone talked, or someone got careless. It doesn't matter how. We just need to get you out." 5 minutes later, Lena found herself being hustled through the building's service entrance, flanked by Marco and 2 other guards she didn't recognize. They moved quickly, but carefully, Marco's hand supporting her elbow whenever the pace threatened to be too much. The safe house turned out to be a modest apartment in a neighborhood Lena didn't recognize. It was nothing like Victor's penthouse, small, sparsely furnished, with bars on the windows and multiple locks on the door. "You'll be safe here," Marco said, checking the windows and drawing the curtains. "No one knows about this location except Victor's inner circle." "When will he be here?" "Soon as he can. He's dealing with the Calabrese situation, making sure they don't try to follow us." Marco's phone buzzed, and he checked it with a frown. "I need to step out for a minute. Leo will be right outside the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Victor." After he left, Lena sank onto the worn couch, her hands trembling. The adrenaline that had carried her through the move was fading, replaced by exhaustion and fear. The baby moved restlessly inside her, and she pressed her hands to her belly. "It's okay," she whispered. "We're okay. Your father is going to make sure of it." The words felt like a promise and a surrender all at once. Hours passed. Lena dozed fitfully on the couch, jerking awake at every sound. She tried calling Victor's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Marco didn't return, and when she cracked open the door to check, she found a different guard stationed outside, older, with a scar running down his left cheek. "Where's Leo?" she asked. "Got called away. I'm Dante. Don't worry, Ms. Ward. You're safe." But Lena didn't feel safe. She felt exposed and vulnerable, alone in a strange apartment with guards she didn't know, waiting for a man who might not make it back at all. It was nearly midnight when she finally heard footsteps in the hallway, followed by the sound of the locks turning. She sat up, her heart in her throat, and felt a flood of relief when Victor walked through the door. Relief that lasted exactly as long as it took her to see the blood on his shirt. "Victor!" She struggled to her feet. "What happened? Are you hurt?" "It's not my blood." He locked the door behind him, his movements mechanical. "Most of it, anyway." "Most of it." Victor pulled off his jacket, and Lena saw the bandage wrapped around his left forearm, already seeping red. "It's just a graze. I've had worse." He moved past her toward the small bathroom. "Did Marco get you here safely?" "Yes, but—" Lena followed him, watching as he unwrapped the bandage to reveal a deep cut along his forearm. "That needs stitches." "It'll be fine." "No, it won't." She pushed past him to the sink, wetting a clean towel. "Sit down." "Lena, sit down, Victor." Her voice was firm, leaving no room for argument. He sat on the closed toilet lid and Lena carefully cleaned the wound. It was worse than he'd made it sound, deep enough that she could see muscle beneath the torn flesh. "This really needs proper medical attention," she said. "Can't risk it. Too many questions." Victor's eyes were closed, his jaw tight. "Just bandage it tight. It'll heal." "How did this happen?" "The Calabrese family sent men to the penthouse. They didn't expect to find it empty, didn't expect us to be ready for them." His voice was flat, emotionless. "We took care of it." "Took care of it how?" Victor opened his eyes, and the emptiness in them made Lena's breath catch. "How do you think?" She continued cleaning the wound, her hands steady even as her mind reeled. This was Victor's world. Violence and blood, and men dying in penthouses over territory and pride. This was what she'd run from, what she'd spent 2 years trying to forget. But as she bandaged his arm with careful precision, as she felt the warmth of his skin under her fingers and saw the vulnerability in his face, she couldn't help but think about what he'd told her. About giving it all up. About choosing them over everything else. "Is it done?" she asked. "The situation with the Calabrese family?" "For now. They're going to be too busy dealing with their losses to come after us again before tomorrow night's meeting." Victor caught her hand as she finished tying off the bandage. "I'm sorry you had to see me like this. I've seen worse, remember?" "I remember everything about that night, including the way you looked at me afterward." He pulled her closer, and she found herself standing between his knees, his eyes level with hers. "You looked at me like I was a monster. I was scared. And now? Are you still scared?" Lena looked at him, at the blood on his shirt and the exhaustion in his eyes, and the bandage on his arm that she'd just tied. She thought about the past 4 days, about the way he'd cared for her with such gentleness, about the plans he was making to walk away from everything he knew. "Yes," she said honestly, "but not of you. I'm scared of what loving you means. I'm scared of what kind of world we'd be bringing our daughter into. I'm scared that even if you walk away, the violence will follow us. Then I'll make sure it doesn't." His hands moved to her hips, steadying her. "Tomorrow night, I end this. I meet with Giovanni, I hand over everything, and then we disappear. New names, new life, new start. Just the 3 of us." "You make it sound so simple." "It is simple. The hard part is letting go of what I thought I needed to be. The easy part is choosing what I actually need." His thumb traced small circles on her hip. "I need you, Lena. I need our daughter. Everything else is just noise." Lena felt tears burning in her eyes. She wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. Wanted to think that love could be enough, that they could build something good out of the ashes of his old life. "What if something goes wrong tomorrow?" she whispered. "What if Giovanni doesn't accept your offer? What if—" "Then I'll handle it. But nothing is going to keep me from coming back to you. Not Giovanni, not his men, not anyone." Victor pulled her closer, his forehead resting against her belly. "I promise you, Lena. I promise both of you. I'm done with this life. After tomorrow, I'm yours. Completely." The baby kicked against where his head rested, and Victor laughed, a sound so full of joy and wonder that it made Lena's heart ache. "She knows my voice," he said. "She's been hearing it for days now. All your conversations with Marco, all your phone calls." Lena's hands found their way into his hair. "She probably thinks you sound angry all the time." "I'll have to fix that. Start reading to her or something. Tell her stories." He looked up at Lena. Will you let me? After tomorrow, after we're safe, will you let me be her father? The question was asked with such vulnerability that Lena felt something crack inside her chest, all the walls she'd built, all the certainty she'd wrapped around herself like armor. Yes, she heard herself say. Yes, Victor, I'll let you be her father. The words hung in the air between them, fragile and profound. Victor's eyes closed, and Lena watched a single tear slide down his cheek before he could stop it. She'd never seen him cry before, not in all their time together, not even when she'd said she was leaving. But now, with her permission to be part of their daughter's life, he wept with silent, shaking shoulders. Lena held him there in that cramped bathroom, her fingers in his hair, his forehead pressed against the child they'd made together. The moment felt stolen from time, a pocket of peace in the middle of chaos. She wanted to memorize it, to hold on to the feeling of his vulnerability and her own softening heart. We should get some sleep, she said finally. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. Victor nodded against her belly, then pulled back and wiped his eyes roughly with his uninjured arm. You take the bed. I'll sleep on the couch. Victor, you're hurt. You need proper rest. I'm fine, Sean. You're not fine. You've been shot at, you've been cut, and you haven't slept properly in days. Lena's voice was firm. The bed is big enough for both of us. We're adults. We can share a bed without it meaning anything. The look Victor gave her suggested he wasn't sure about that last part, but he was too exhausted to argue. They moved to the bedroom, small, with a double bed and a single nightstand, and Lena climbed in first, settling on her side with pillows propped to support her belly. Victor stripped off his bloodied shirt, and Lena tried not to stare at the scars that mapped his torso, evidence of a violent life lived in the shadows. He caught her looking and paused. Not pretty, I know. I wasn't thinking that. She had been thinking about how each scar represented a time he could have died, a time someone had gotten close enough to hurt him. How many of those happened while we were together? 2. The one on my shoulder and the one on my ribs. He pointed to each in turn. I told you they were from accidents. Car crash for the shoulder, fell on some equipment for the ribs. And I believed you. I needed you to believe me, needed you to think I was safer than I was. Victor lay down on top of the covers, keeping distance between them. I spent our entire marriage trying to protect you from the truth of what my life was really like. Maybe if you'd been honest, I would have been prepared when I finally saw it. Or maybe you would have left sooner. He turned his head to look at her. I used to watch you sleep sometimes, back in the penthouse. You looked so peaceful, so innocent. I think about all the things I'd done that day, the deals, the threats, the violence, and wonder how I got lucky enough to come home to someone like you. You never seemed like you wondered. You always seemed so confident, so sure of yourself. That's the act, Lena. That's what I show the world because showing weakness gets you killed in my world. But with you, when you were sleeping, I could let the mask slip. I could be just a man who was terrified of losing the best thing that ever happened to him. The admission made Lena's throat tight. You did lose me. I know, and I've spent 2 years trying to figure out how to live with that. Victor's hand moved across the small space between them, palm up in invitation. Can I? Lena understood what he was asking. She placed her hand in his, and he brought it to rest on his chest, right over his heart. She could feel it beating, strong, steady, alive. This is the only thing I have that's truly mine, he said. Everything else, the power, the money, the territory, it all belongs to the life I inherited from Antonio. But this, what I feel for you, what I feel for our daughter, that's mine. That's the only thing I get to choose. And you're choosing us. I'm choosing us. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Tomorrow, when I meet with Giovanni, I'm going to give him everything. And then I'm going to come back here, and we're going to figure out what happens next, together. Lena wanted to believe it was possible, wanted to think that tomorrow would be the clean break Victor promised. But she'd learned the hard way that in his world, nothing was ever simple or clean. What if Giovanni wants more than you're offering? She asked. What if he wants you dead to prevent any possibility of you coming back for what you gave away? He might, which is why I'm not going in blind. Victor's voice took on that hard edge she recognized. The businessman, the strategist. I've arranged for copies of all the information I'm giving Giovanni to be sent to 3 different people if I don't check in every 12 hours. People who would love to see the Calabrese family destroyed. It's insurance. So even in leaving, you're planning for war. I'm planning for survival. There's a difference. He squeezed her hand. I won't let anything happen to you or Sophia. Whatever it takes, however dirty I have to fight, I'll make sure you're both safe. Sophia. Lena tested the name again. You really want to name her after your mother? Only if you agree. She's your daughter, too. She's our daughter. The correction felt important. And I like the name. Sophia Moretti. Victor's intake of breath was sharp. You'll let her have my name? She is yours, biologically, legally, in every way that matters. Lena shifted, trying to get comfortable. The baby was active again, pushing against her ribs. I left because I was scared, Victor. Not because I stopped loving you. I need you to understand that. I'm starting to. He moved closer, careful not to jostle her. Can I feel her? Lena guided his hand to where the baby was moving, and they lay there in the dark, connected by the life between them. Sophia kicked and rolled as if performing for her father, and Victor's laugh was soft and full of wonder. She's going to be trouble, he murmured. She's your daughter. Of course she's going to be trouble. They fell silent, the weight of tomorrow pressing down on them. Lena could feel Victor's exhaustion in the way his breathing gradually deepened, could sense him fighting sleep because he didn't want to miss a moment of feeling his daughter move. Rest, she whispered. I'll still be here in the morning. Promise? The question, asked with such vulnerability, made her chest ache. I promise. Victor's eyes finally closed, his hand still resting on her belly. Lena watched him sleep, studying the face she'd once loved so completely, she couldn't imagine life without him. The past 4 days had cracked open something she'd thought was sealed shut. Not just memories of the good times, but the possibility that those times could exist again in a different form. She must have dozed off eventually, because the next thing she knew, pale morning light was filtering through the curtains, and Victor was no longer beside her. Panic spiked through her chest until she heard his voice from the other room, low and intense. Lena struggled out of bed and made her way to the bathroom, then to the living area where Victor stood by the window, phone pressed to his ear. He was already dressed in a fresh suit. Where he'd gotten it from, she had no idea, and his expression was carved from stone. I don't care what he thinks is reasonable, Victor was saying. Those are my terms. He accepts them, or there's no deal. A pause. Then tell him he'll be fighting a war on 3 fronts, because I've already reached out to the Santoro family and the Russians. They're very interested in what I know about his operations. Victor ended the call and turned to find Lena watching him. His face softened immediately. You should be resting. I've been resting for 4 days. I'm starting to forget what standing feels like. She moved to the small kitchen area, looking for something to eat. Was that about tonight? Giovanni's getting cold feet. Thinks I'm asking for too much in exchange for what I'm offering. Victor followed her, opening the refrigerator. Sit down. I'll make you something. I can make my own breakfast. I know you can, but you're going to sit down and let me do it anyway. There was no room for argument in his tone. Lena sat, watching as Victor moved around the unfamiliar kitchen with surprising efficiency. He made her scrambled eggs, toast, and poured a large glass of orange juice, setting it all in front of her with a stern look that demanded she eat. What did you tell Giovanni? She asked between bites. That if he doesn't accept my terms by noon, I'm going to burn everything to the ground before I leave. Scorched earth. Nothing left for him or anyone else to fight over. You wouldn't really do that. Victor's smile was cold. Wouldn't I? I built most of that empire, Lena. I know exactly where the weak points are, exactly which relationships are held together by my reputation alone. If Giovanni wants to play games, I'll remind him why people were afraid of me in the first place. The man standing in front of her was a stranger, or rather, he was the version of Victor she'd glimpsed only in rare moments during their marriage. The ruthless businessman, the feared Mafia boss who'd clawed his way to power through intelligence and violence. You scare me when you're like this, she said honestly. I know, but this is who I need to be to get us out safely. He sat across from her, his expression gentling. After tonight, you'll never have to see this side of me again. I promise. Can you really just turn it off? The violence, the calculating, all of it? I don't know, Victor admitted. But I'm going to try. For you, for Sophia. They ate in silence for a while, the weight of the upcoming meeting pressing down on both of them. Lena forced herself to finish the food even though anxiety had killed her appetite. She needed to stay strong, stay healthy, for the baby's sake if not her own. Dr. Chen arrived mid-morning, looking harried and concerned. Marco had clearly called her to the safe house, though Lena wasn't sure how he'd convinced her to come to such a questionable location. How are you feeling? Dr. Chen asked, setting up her equipment in the bedroom. Better, stronger. The bed rest has helped. Good. Let's take a look at you and the baby, make sure everything is progressing normally. The examination was thorough. Dr. Chen checked Lena's blood pressure, still slightly elevated but improved, listened to the baby's heartbeat, and measured her belly. When she finished, her expression was cautiously optimistic. You're doing much better, she said. The rest has made a real difference, but I'm still concerned about your stress levels. Your blood pressure spikes whenever you're anxious, which isn't good for you or the baby. That's going to be hard to avoid given the circumstances, Lena said. Dr. Chen glanced toward the closed door behind which Victor was presumably still making phone calls and planning for the evening. Mr. Moretti mentioned that you might be relocating soon. Is that true? Maybe. If things go well tonight. Then my advice is to get somewhere peaceful as soon as possible. Somewhere you can focus entirely on the baby without all this. She gestured vaguely at the barred windows and the sound of guards talking in the hallway. Drama. After Dr. Chen left, Lena found Victor in the living room, surrounded by papers and his phone. He looked up as she entered, immediately standing. What did she say? That I'm better but still need to avoid stress. Lena managed a weak smile. So no pressure for tonight or anything? Victor crossed to her, his hands gentle on her shoulders. I'm going to fix this. Tonight, I fix everything. Or everything falls apart. That's not going to happen. You can't know that, Victor. You can't control every variable, every person who might have an agenda. Watch me. He kissed her forehead, a gesture that had become familiar over the past days. I need to go meet with my lawyers this afternoon. Make sure all the paperwork is in order for the transfer. Marco will stay here with you. Don't open the door for anyone else. When is the meeting with Giovanni? 8 o'clock, neutral ground, an old warehouse by the docks that neither family controls. Victor's jaw tightened. I should be back by 10 at the latest. And if you're not? Then Marco has instructions to get you out of the city. There's a car waiting with a full tank, cash in the glove box, and directions to a place upstate where you'll be safe. Lena's blood ran cold. You're planning for the possibility that you won't come back. I'm planning for every possibility. That's how I've stayed alive this long. Victor cupped her face in his hands. But I will come back, Lena. I didn't find you again just to lose you. He left an hour later and the apartment felt immediately emptier without his presence. Lena tried to rest, tried to read, tried to do anything to make the hours pass faster. But her mind kept circling back to the same terrible scenarios. Victor bleeding out in a warehouse. Giovanni's men torturing him for information. A bullet finding its mark and leaving her truly alone. Marco brought her lunch and tried to make small talk, but even he seemed tense, checking his phone constantly for updates. The other guards rotated in and out, their faces grim and watchful. By 6 o'clock, Lena was pacing the small apartment despite Dr. Chen's warnings about rest. The baby seemed to sense her anxiety, moving restlessly and pressing hard against her ribs. She tried the breathing exercises she'd learned at the clinic, tried to calm her racing heart, but nothing worked. At 7:30, Marco's phone rang. He answered, listened for a moment, and his expression darkened. What is it? Lena demanded. What's wrong? Giovanni moved the meeting time up, wants to meet at 7 instead of 8. Marco was already moving, checking his weapon. Says if Victor isn't there in 20 minutes, the deal's off. That's a trap. Probably, but we don't have a choice. Marco made a series of rapid calls, his voice clipped and professional. Boss is on his way. He'll make it, but it'll be close. The minutes crawled by. Lena sat on the couch, her hands pressed to her belly, whispering reassurances to Sophia that she didn't believe herself. 7:45. 7:50. 7:55. At 8 o'clock, Marco's phone rang again. He answered, and Lena watched his face go pale. "What?" she whispered. "What happened?" Marco lowered the phone slowly. "There's been shooting at the warehouse. Multiple casualties. They're trying to get a count now." The room spun. Lena gripped the couch cushions, fighting the wave of dizziness that threatened to pull her under. "Is Victor?" "I don't know. Communication went dark 3 minutes ago." Marco was already moving toward the door. "I need to go there, see what's happening, but I can't leave you unprotected." "Then take me with you." "Absolutely not. Victor would kill me if I put you in danger." "Victor might be dead." The words tore out of her, sharp and horrible. "Take me with you, or I swear I'll find my own way there." Marco looked at her for a long moment, clearly weighing his loyalty to Victor against the determination in her eyes. Finally, he cursed under his breath. "You stay in the car. No matter what. You don't get out. You don't put yourself at risk. Understood?" Lena nodded, already grabbing her coat. The drive to the docks felt like it took hours, though it couldn't have been more than 15 minutes. As they got closer, Lena could see smoke rising in the distance, could hear sirens wailing. Marco's jaw was set, his hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. They pulled up 2 blocks from the warehouse, close enough to see the chaos, but far enough to hopefully avoid immediate danger. Emergency vehicles lined the street, ambulances, fire trucks, police cars with lights flashing. Marco parked and turned to her. "Stay here. Lock the doors. If anyone approaches who isn't me or Victor, you drive away. Keys are in the ignition." "Marco, promise me, Ms. Ward. Promise me you'll stay safe." "I promise." The lie tasted bitter. Marco disappeared into the crowd of emergency responders and onlookers. Lena locked the doors and watched, her heart in her throat, as paramedics rushed into the warehouse and came out carrying bodies on stretchers. She counted them. 1, 2, 3, 4. All of them covered in blood, some moving and some terrifyingly still. She couldn't tell from this distance if any of them were Victor. 5 minutes passed. 10. Lena's hands trembled on the steering wheel and the baby kicked frantically, as if sensing her mother's terror. She was reaching for the door handle, ready to break her promise to Marco when she saw him emerge from the warehouse. He was alone. Lena's vision tunneled. She fumbled with the door lock, stumbling out of the car despite her promise, despite everything. Marco saw her and broke into a run. "I told you to stay in the car!" "Where is he?" Lena grabbed Marco's jacket. "Where's Victor?" "He's alive, but he's hurt, and he won't go to the hospital until he sees you." Marco took her arm. "Come on, but stay close to me." They made their way through the chaos to an ambulance parked on the far side of the warehouse. And there, sitting on the back bumper with a paramedic trying to examine him, was Victor. He was covered in blood, his own and others, with a gash across his temple and his shirt torn. But he was alive, he was breathing, and the moment he saw Lena, relief flooded his face. "You shouldn't be here," he said, even as he reached for her. "You're one to talk." Lena took his hand, not caring about the blood. "What happened?" "Giovanni tried to kill me, brought 20 men to what was supposed to be a peaceful negotiation." Victor winced as the paramedic pressed gauze to his head wound. "But I was ready. Had my own men positioned, had backup plans. It got messy." "Messy?" Lena looked at the warehouse, at the bodies still being carried out. "How many people died?" "Too many." Victor's voice was flat. "But none of them were supposed to be there. This was supposed to be simple. Hand over the empire, walk away clean. Giovanni made it complicated." "Sir, you really need to come to the hospital," the paramedic interrupted. "That head wound needs stitches, and you might have a concussion." "I'm fine." "You're not fine." Lena's voice broke. "You're bleeding. You might have a concussion, and you're sitting here acting like it's nothing." "Because compared to losing you, it is nothing." Victor stood, swaying slightly, and Marco immediately steadied him. "Is the transfer complete?" "Yes, boss. Giovanni signed before the shooting started. Everything's legally his now." "Good. Then we're done here." Victor looked at Lena. "We need to leave, now, before the police start asking questions we can't answer." They made it back to the car. Victor leaning heavily on Marco while Lena hovered anxiously nearby. The drive back to the safe house was tense and silent, broken only by Lena insisting they stop at a 24-hour pharmacy for proper bandages and antiseptic. Back in the apartment, Lena cleaned Victor's wounds with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The cut on his head was deep, but not as bad as all the blood had made it seem. The real damage was the bruising on his ribs and the way he winced every time he breathed too deeply. "Broken ribs?" she asked. "Probably cracked. I've had worse." "That's not reassuring." Lena finished bandaging his head. "You could have died tonight." "But I didn't. And Giovanni signed the papers before he tried to kill me, which means legally, I'm out. Everything belongs to him now." "What about his men? Won't they come after you for what happened tonight?" Victor was quiet for a long moment. "The men who attacked me are dead, Lena. All of them. Giovanni might want revenge, but he's smart enough to know that coming after me now would just restart a war he can't afford." The casual way he said it, the acceptance that he'd killed people tonight, that bodies were probably still cooling in that warehouse, should have horrified her. Maybe it would have, a week ago. But now, looking at him bandaged and exhausted and alive, all she felt was relief. "We need to leave," she said. "Tonight, before Giovanni changes his mind or before someone else decides to take a shot at you. Can you travel? Is it safe for you and the baby?" "Dr. Chen said I was better, and staying here definitely isn't safe." Lena helped him to his feet. "Where would we go?" "I have a place, a cabin upstate, about 4 hours from here. It's remote, off the grid, registered under a name that can't be traced back to me." Victor swayed slightly, and she caught him. "We can stay there until you're ready to deliver, figure out our next move after Sophia's born." "And then?" "Then we become whoever we want to be. New identities, new city, new life." He looked at her with eyes that were bright with pain and hope and determination. "No more looking over our shoulders, Lena. No more running. Just us and our daughter, building something clean from all this mess." Lena wanted to believe it was possible. Wanted to think that they could drive away from the violence and the fear and somehow arrive at a future where they were just a normal family. But as she looked at Victor, this man who had killed for her, who had given up an empire for her, who was barely standing but still planning their escape, she realized that normal had never been in the cards for them. What they had was something messier and more complicated and somehow more real. They had survival and sacrifice and a love that had been tested by separation and fear and had somehow endured. "Okay," she said finally. "Let's go." Within an hour, they were in a car heading north, leaving the city and its violence behind. Victor drove despite his injuries, refusing to let Marco take the wheel. Lena sat in the passenger seat, one hand on her belly and the other resting on Victor's thigh, grounding them both. As the city lights faded in the rear-view mirror and darkness swallowed the highway, Lena felt something shift inside her, not the baby, but something deeper. A letting go of the past 2 years, of the fear and anger that had driven her away. A tentative reaching toward a future she couldn't quite see, but was willing to trust might exist. "Are you scared?" Victor asked, his eyes on the road. "Terrified," Lena admitted. "But not of you. Not anymore." His hand found hers in the darkness, and they drove on into the unknown, carrying with them the fragile hope that somewhere ahead peace was waiting. The cabin appeared through the trees just as dawn began to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Lena had dozed fitfully during the drive, waking every time Victor's breathing changed, or the car hit a bump in the increasingly rough road. Now, as he pulled to a stop in front of a modest wooden structure surrounded by forest, she felt a strange mixture of relief and trepidation. This was it. The place where they would try to build something new from the wreckage of everything that had come before. Victor killed the engine and sat for a moment, his hands still gripping the steering wheel. In the growing light, Lena could see how pale he was, how tightly he held himself against the pain of his injuries. "Let me help you," she said, reaching for the door handle. "You shouldn't be helping me. You should be resting." But his protest was weak, and he didn't resist when she came around to his side of the car and offered her arm. They made their way slowly up the porch steps. Victor pulled a key from under a flower pot. Such an ordinary hiding place that it made Lena want to laugh or cry, she wasn't sure which, and unlocked the door. The interior was simple but clean. A main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area with basic appliances, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. The furniture was worn but comfortable, and everything smelled faintly of cedar and dust. "It's not much," Victor said, watching her face, "but it's safe. No one knows about this place except me and Marco, and he'd die before he told anyone. It's perfect." And somehow it was. After days in the stark penthouse and the claustrophobic safe house, this modest cabin felt like sanctuary. Victor moved to the couch and lowered himself carefully onto it, his face gray with exhaustion. Lena found blankets in one of the bedrooms and brought them to him, along with the pain medication the pharmacy had sold her. "Take these," she ordered, "and don't argue." He swallowed the pills without protest, which told her more about his condition than words could. She settled beside him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his battered body. "You should sleep," she said. "You're running on fumes. So are you. I slept in the car." "That wasn't sleep. That was passing out from stress." Victor's hand found hers. "We're both a mess, aren't we? We're both alive. That's what matters." They sat in silence as the sun rose higher, filling the cabin with warm light. Lena could hear birds outside, the rustle of wind through trees, sounds so normal and peaceful they felt like a gift. "What happens now?" she asked finally. "Now we rest. We heal. We wait for Sophia to be born." Victor's thumb traced circles on her palm. "And then we figure out who we want to be." "Just like that?" "Just like that." But over the next 3 days, Lena learned that nothing was ever just like that. Victor's injuries were worse than he'd admitted. The cracked ribs made breathing painful, the head wound throbbed constantly, and he moved like a man decades older than his actual age. She called Dr. Chen from a burner phone Victor had in the cabin, and the doctor made the drive upstate with a medical bag and a stern expression. "You're an idiot," Dr. Chen told Victor after examining him. "These ribs could puncture a lung if you're not careful. You need complete rest for at least 2 weeks." "I'm fine." "You're stubborn." Dr. Chen turned to Lena. "Make sure he actually rests. And your blood pressure is still elevated. I want both of you on bed rest until I say otherwise." After the doctor left, Lena and Victor looked at each other and started laughing. Painful, exhausted laughter that hurt Victor's ribs and made the baby kick in protest. "We're quite a pair," Lena said when they'd recovered. "Both of us supposed to be resting, neither of us good at taking orders." "I'm excellent at taking orders. I just choose not to follow them." "That's not the same thing." They fell into an unexpected rhythm over the following days. Lena would wake first, make breakfast from the supplies Marco had stocked the cabin with, and bring it to Victor, who insisted on eating at the small kitchen table rather than lying down. They'd spend the mornings reading, Victor going through newspapers on his phone, tracking the fallout from his exit from the business, while Lena worked her way through a stack of parenting books she found on a shelf. Afternoons were for rest, though neither of them slept well. Victor's pain kept him shifting restlessly, and Lena's anxiety about the approaching birth made it hard to relax. They'd lie in separate beds in separate rooms, the cabin quiet except for the sounds of the forest outside. Evenings were different. As the sun set and darkness gathered outside the windows, they'd find themselves together in the main room, talking, really talking, in a way they never had during their marriage. Victor told her about growing up hungry and afraid, about the first time he'd seen Antonio Moretti and thought he was looking at a king. He described learning the business from the ground up, starting as a lookout when he was barely 12 and working his way through every position until Antonio trusted him enough to make him his heir. "I never wanted it," Victor said one night, staring into the fire Lena had insisted he let her build. "The power, the responsibility, all of it. But Antonio didn't give me a choice. He saved my life, so I owed him mine in return." "That's not how love works," Lena said gently. "That's not how family works." "It's the only way I knew." Victor's eyes met hers across the firelight. "Until I met you. You were the first person who wanted me for something other than what I could do for them, or how I could be useful. I fell in love with who you were when you let your guard down. The man who brought me coffee in bed and remembered how I liked my eggs. The man who would drop everything to take me to see a movie I mentioned wanting to watch. That man was real. He's still real underneath everything else. I know. I'm starting to remember that. Lena shared her own stories about the loneliness of the past 2 years, about the fear that had driven every decision she'd made. She told him about the moment she'd realized she was pregnant, sitting in a gas station bathroom 3 states away with a positive test in her trembling hands. I cried for 3 hours, she admitted. Not because I didn't want her, but because I knew what it meant. I couldn't hide forever with a baby, couldn't keep running without leaving a trail. And I couldn't imagine raising her alone, but I couldn't imagine going back to you either. Why not? Because I thought love and safety were mutually exclusive with you. I thought I had to choose. And now? Lena looked at him. This man who had given up everything, who bore fresh scars alongside old ones, who watched her with such careful hope in his eyes. Now, I think maybe I was wrong. Maybe safety isn't about avoiding all danger. Maybe it's about trusting the person beside you to fight for what matters. The conversation shifted something between them. They started sitting closer on the couch, started touching more casually, his hand on her knee, her fingers in his hair when she helped him change the bandage on his head. The physical distance they'd carefully maintained began to shrink. On the 8th day in the cabin, Lena woke to find Victor in the kitchen making breakfast. He moved stiffly, but with more confidence than he'd had since the warehouse, and the color had returned to his face. "You're feeling better," she said. "Ribs still hurt, but the headaches are gone." He cracked eggs into a pan with one hand. "Dr. Chen is coming today to check on us both. Thought I'd show her I'm capable of basic tasks." "You're capable of much more than basic tasks." Victor glanced at her, something heating in his gaze. "Is that right?" "I didn't mean it like that." But Lena felt her cheeks warm. "Didn't you?" He abandoned the eggs and crossed to where she stood in the doorway. "Because I've been sleeping in a separate room for 8 days, Lena. 8 days of knowing you're just down the hall, of remembering what it was like to hold you, to—" He stopped himself. "I'm trying to be patient, trying to give you space and time, but I'm not made of stone." Lena's breath caught. She could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the want in his eyes that he was trying so hard to bank. And she realized that she wanted it too, wanted him in a way that had nothing to do with their complicated past and everything to do with the future they were trying to build. "Victor," she whispered, "tell me to stop. Tell me it's too soon, and I'll go back to my room and we'll pretend this conversation never happened." Instead of answering with words, Lena closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was different from the kisses they'd shared during their marriage, less desperate, less performative. This kiss was tentative and searching, a question being asked and answered simultaneously. Victor's hands came up to cup her face with such gentleness that tears pricked her eyes. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I never stopped. Even when I thought you were gone forever, even when I was drowning in the business and the violence, I loved you." "I love you too." The admission felt like freedom. "I tried not to. I tried to convince myself that leaving meant I had to stop caring. But you don't just turn off love like a switch." "What does this mean? For us?" Lena took his hand and placed it on her belly, where Sophia was already stirring with her morning gymnastics routine. "It means we try, really try, not like before when we were both hiding parts of ourselves. It means you tell me the truth even when it's ugly, and I stay even when I'm scared." "I can do that." Victor's hand spread wide over her stomach. "I can be honest. I can be patient. I can be whatever you need me to be. I don't need you to be anything except yourself. The real you, not the mask you show the world." They were interrupted by the baby delivering a particularly strong kick that made both of them laugh. The eggs on the stove began to burn, filling the kitchen with smoke, and they scrambled to salvage breakfast while still laughing. It felt normal. It felt right. It felt like the beginning of something they'd been trying to find for 2 years. "Doctor." Chen arrived mid-morning and pronounced them both improved enough to end the strict bed rest, though she warned them to continue taking it easy. She examined Lena thoroughly, checking the baby's position and measuring her belly. "You're at 36 weeks now," Dr. Chen said. "Everything looks good. Baby could come any time in the next few weeks." "How will we know?" Lena asked. I mean, I know about contractions, but what if something goes wrong? We're hours from the nearest hospital. Which is why I'm going to give you very clear instructions on what to watch for and when to head to the hospital. Dr. Chen pulled out her tablet. I'm also going to give you the number of a midwife who lives about an hour from here. She's experienced with home births if it comes to that, though I'd prefer you deliver in a hospital if possible. After the doctor left with promises to return in a week, Lena and Victor spent the afternoon preparing. They cleaned out one of the bedrooms to serve as a nursery, using supplies that Marco delivered along with a car seat, diapers, and tiny clothes that made Victor's hands shake when he held them. She's going to be so small, he said, staring at a onesie that looked impossibly tiny. She's going to be perfect. Lena took the onesie and folded it carefully. And she's going to have both of us. That's more than either of us had growing up. I'm going to mess this up. I don't know how to be a father. The only example I had was Antonio, and he was more interested in creating a successor than raising a son. So you'll do the opposite of what he did. You'll love her without conditions. You'll let her be whoever she wants to be instead of who you need her to be. Victor pulled Lena close, careful of her belly. What if I can't? What if the violence in me is too deep, too fundamental to change? Then you'll learn. We'll both learn. She tilted her head back to look at him. You're not your past, Victor. You're not Antonio's creation or the Mafia boss everyone feared. You're the man who's choosing to walk away from all of that. That takes more strength than staying ever could. Over the next week, they settled deeper into their new life. Victor's wounds healed, and he started doing repairs around the cabin, fixing a loose step on the porch, patching a leak in the roof, building a cradle from wood he found in the shed. He worked with quiet intensity, and Lena understood it was his way of building something good with hands that had done so much harm. They fell asleep together now, Victor curled protectively around Lena's back, his hand resting on her belly so he could feel Sophia move. Sometimes in the night, Lena would wake to find him whispering to their daughter, making promises about the life they'd give her, the world they'd protect her from. On the 15th day in the cabin, Lena woke just after midnight to a sensation she'd never felt before, a tightening across her belly that took her breath away. She lay still, waiting, and 10 minutes later it came again. Victor. She shook his shoulder gently. Victor, wake up. He was alert immediately, years of dangerous living making him attuned to the slightest change. What's wrong? Are you okay? I think I'm in labor. The words transformed him. He was out of bed in seconds, turning on lights, finding the list Dr. Chen had left them, checking the time between contractions. His hands shook as he helped Lena into comfortable clothes, and she realized he was terrified. It's okay, she said, catching his face between her hands. Women do this every day. We're going to be fine. You don't know that. So many things could go wrong. Then we deal with them. Together. Another contraction hit, and Lena breathed through it the way the parenting books had described. Call Dr. Chen. Find out if we should head to the hospital or wait. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls and careful preparation. Dr. Chen advised them to wait until the contractions were 5 minutes apart and then head to the hospital she'd identified about 2 hours away. Marco materialized at the cabin. Lena still wasn't sure how he always knew when he was needed, with a bag of supplies and a calm competence that helped Victor settle. By dawn, the contractions were coming every 7 minutes. By mid-morning, they were in the car heading south, Lena breathing through each wave of pain while Victor drove with white-knuckled intensity. You're doing great, he kept saying. You're so strong. Just keep breathing. Easy for you to say. You're not the one feeling like your body is trying to turn itself inside out. Despite the pain, Lena found herself almost giddy. This was it. In a few hours, she'd meet her daughter, their daughter, the little person who had brought them back together after 2 years of separation. They made it to the hospital with an hour to spare before things got really intense. The staff took one look at Lena and whisked her into a delivery room, hooking her up to monitors and checking her progress. Victor stayed by her side the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, whispering encouragement even when she told him to shut up. The labor was long and hard. 14 hours of contractions that felt like they were splitting her in half, of breathing exercises that stopped working, of exhaustion so profound she wasn't sure she could continue. But every time she wanted to give up, Victor was there. You can do this, he said, his voice steady even though she could see tears in his eyes. You're the strongest person I know. You survived leaving me, survived 2 years alone, survived everything the past 2 weeks threw at you. You can survive this. I don't feel strong. You don't have to feel it. You just have to be it. And somehow, she was. At 11:47 p.m., after one final push that felt like it took every ounce of strength she had left, Sophia Moretti entered the world with a cry that was surprisingly loud for someone so small. She's here, the doctor said, placing the tiny, screaming baby on Lena's chest. You have a daughter. Lena looked down at the impossibly small person in her arms, red-faced, furious at being evicted from her warm home, perfect in every way, and felt her heart crack open with a love so fierce it was almost painful. Hi, Sophia, she whispered. We've been waiting for you. Victor stood frozen beside the bed, staring at his daughter with an expression of pure wonder. When the nurse offered to let him cut the umbilical cord, his hands shook so badly he almost dropped the scissors. But he managed it, and then he was crying openly, tears streaming down his face as he watched the nurses clean and measure their daughter. She's beautiful, he said, when they finally placed Sophia in his arms. She's perfect. Look at her, Lena. Look at what we made. Sophia had stopped crying and was staring up at her father with dark, serious eyes. Victor's eyes, Lena thought. The baby's tiny hand wrapped around Victor's finger, and Lena watched the most feared Mafia boss in the city completely fall apart over a 6-pound infant. I love you, he whispered to Sophia. I love you so much. I'm going to keep you safe. I'm going to give you everything good in this world and protect you from everything bad. I promise. Victor, Lena said softly, you can't protect her from everything. That's not possible. Watch me try. He looked up at Lena, his face wet with tears. Thank you. Thank you for carrying her, for going through this, for giving me a second chance. I won't waste it. I swear I won't waste it. They spent the next 2 days in the hospital, learning how to feed and change and soothe their daughter. Victor barely slept, too busy watching Sophia breathe, counting her fingers and toes over and over, marveling at every tiny sound she made. Lena watched him transform from hardened criminal to devoted father and felt something settle in her chest, the last of her fear finally releasing its hold. This was right. They were right. Not perfect, not without complications, but right. Dr. Chen visited on the second day and pronounced both mother and baby healthy enough to go home. Marco arrived with the car and a massive bouquet of flowers, his tough exterior cracking when he got his first look at Sophia. She's got your stubborn chin, boss, he said, and Victor laughed, a sound of pure joy that Lena hadn't heard in years. The drive back to the cabin was careful and slow, Victor treating every bump in the road like a personal affront. Sophia slept in her car seat, occasionally making small sounds that had both parents checking on her frantically. When they finally pulled up to the cabin, the sun was setting, painting the forest in gold and amber light. Victor carried Sophia inside while Lena gathered the bags, and they stood together in the main room, now truly a home rather than a hiding place, looking at their daughter sleeping peacefully in her father's arms. What happens now? Lena asked. Now we live. Victor's voice was soft but certain. We wake up every morning in this cabin or wherever we decide to go next. We feed our daughter and watch her grow. We build something normal and boring and absolutely perfect. No more running. No more running. We're exactly where we're supposed to be. Over the next few weeks, they settled into the exhausting, wonderful rhythm of new parenthood. Sleepless nights and endless feedings, tiny victories when Sophia learned to sleep for 3 hours straight, panic when she cried for no reason they could determine. Through it all, Victor was present in a way Lena had never imagined possible. He changed diapers without complaint, walked the floors at 2 a.m. when Sophia refused to settle, sang lullabies in Italian that he said his mother had sung to him. He researched every aspect of baby care with the same intensity he'd once brought to business deals, asking Dr. Chen questions until the doctor laughingly told him to relax. 1 month after Sophia's birth, they were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, the baby asleep in Victor's arms, when Lena's phone rang. It was Marco. Boss, we might have a problem. Victor's entire body tensed, the old instincts kicking in immediately. What kind of problem? Giovanni's dead, killed in a hit 3 days ago. The Santoro family is claiming responsibility, says he left his territory vulnerable when he expanded too fast after taking over your operations. That's not my problem anymore. That's what I told them when they called, but they want to meet with you. They're offering you back everything you gave Giovanni, plus a percentage of his territories. They think with you leading, they could take over the entire eastern seaboard. Victor was quiet for a long moment. Lena watched his face, saw the calculation there, the automatic assessment of opportunities and risks. This was who he'd been for so long that even now, a month into his new life, the pull of power was still there. Then Sophia stirred in his arms, making a small sound of protest at being disturbed. Victor looked down at his daughter, and Lena watched everything else fall away from his face. "Tell them no," he said. "Boss, are you sure? This is—" "I said no, Marco. I'm done. That life is over." Victor's eyes met Lena's. "Tell them I'm retired. Tell them I'm dead. Tell them whatever you want. But I'm not coming back." After he ended the call, they sat in silence, watching the last of the sunlight fade from the sky. Sophia's breathing was soft and even, her tiny hand curled against Victor's chest. "Thank you," Lena said finally. "For what?" "For choosing us. For really, truly choosing us. There was no choice to make." "Not really." Victor shifted Sophia carefully so he could put his arm around Lena. "Everything I did before was about building walls and gaining power so I could protect what mattered. But what matters is right here, you and Sophia. Everything else is just noise." They sat together as night fell, a small family in a cabin in the woods, building a life from the ashes of everything they'd left behind. It wasn't the ending Lena had imagined when she'd walked into that law office 3 weeks ago. It wasn't the neat, clean break she'd thought she wanted. It was better. Because they hadn't just survived their past, they'd learned from it, grown from it, used it to build something stronger. Victor had walked away from an empire, and Lena had learned that love didn't mean accepting everything without question. They'd both changed, both chosen to become people who could build a life together instead of tearing each other apart. 3 months later, they left the cabin. Not because they were running, but because they were ready to move forward. Victor had spent the time establishing new identities for all 3 of them, creating a paper trail that would stand up to scrutiny, setting up bank accounts, and a life in a small coastal town where no one knew the name Moretti. They bought a house, small, but with a yard where Sophia could play when she was older. Victor got a job managing a marina, using his organizational skills for something that had nothing to do with crime. Lena enrolled in online classes to finish the degree she'd abandoned when she'd married Victor. They were normal, boring, exactly what Lena had dreamed of during those long, lonely nights in hiding. On Sophia's first birthday, they threw a small party in their backyard. A few neighbors came, people who knew them as the Wards, a young couple with a beautiful daughter and no complicated past. There was cake and balloons, and Sophia, who was just learning to walk, stumbled around the yard with Victor hovering anxiously nearby. After the guests left and Sophia was asleep in her crib, Lena and Victor stood in their kitchen cleaning up, working in the comfortable silence of people who knew each other deeply. "Do you miss it?" Lena asked. "The power, the control, all of it?" Victor considered the question seriously, like he did everything now. "Sometimes. When I hear about a problem and my first instinct is to solve it the old way, when someone disrespects me and part of me wants to remind them who I used to be. But then I come home to you and Sophia, and I remember that this is real power, being someone my daughter can look up to, being a man my wife trusts, building something that doesn't require violence to maintain." He pulled Lena close. "I don't miss what I was. I like who I'm becoming. I like who you're becoming too." They stood there in their small kitchen, in their normal house, in their boring life, and Lena felt complete in a way she never had before. This was what she'd been running toward, even when she thought she was running away. This peace, this safety, this love that had survived everything thrown at it and emerged not broken, but stronger. The debts were settled. The past was closed. The family was free. And in the nursery upstairs, Sophia slept peacefully, dreaming whatever dreams 1-year-olds dream, completely unaware that her parents had burned down an empire and rebuilt it as a home, all for her. That was everything that mattered. That was enough. That was home.